Are you a godlike being looking to create a following, or a multiplanetary corporation trying to build new markets? Perhaps just a teenager searching for 10 minutes of instant gratification. Either way, you've come to the right place. Welcome to IQ 42, where today I'll be answering the age-old question, how to build civilization from scratch. First, we need to have a good understanding of what civilization is. Civilization is a complex human society usually made up of different cities with certain characteristics of cultural and technological development. The world we live in today is made up of hundreds of smaller civilizations, but with the internet, globalist trade, and other technologies, they are more or less all part of one giant civilization, the human race. Back when these technologies didn't exist, many civilizations existed independently, sometimes being completely unaware of the other. Think ancient Egypt and ancient China, who for a lot of history had no knowledge of the other's existence. Both were ancient communities, both shared similar goals of survival and safety. Both had their own cultures and languages that have lasted centuries and made it into the modern world. Many civilizations were not as successful. Some were invaded by others, like the Aztec invaded by the Spanish. Others disappeared due to their environment, like the Mayans. If you're alive on this earth right now, you're on the winning team. Luckily, you are part of a civilization that stood the test of time. Well, luck might not be the best word. There are some key traits any major civilizations share that make them so successful. Now for the part of the video for all my time travelers, how to build a civilization from scratch. Let's say you are starting out with a handful of humanoid beings on a planet just like Earth. Your first step is going to be finding a geographic starting point. In such an early point, it is important to be careful of those who are still uncivilized, those pesky hunter-gatherers. You are going to want land that is easily protected from these barbarians, but also has plentiful natural resources and room for expansion. This is a hard balance to find, but some perfect examples would be the Nile, which has the Sahara Desert on all sides for protection, and also has plenty of room for growing crops and expansion along the river. Another good example is Japan, which might be more limited on arable land, but is very well protected by being an island. For the purpose of this civilization speedrun, I'll be picking a pretty underrated starting spot. Modern-day Indonesia, specifically the island of Java. It is some of the most productive farmland in the world due to volcanic activity, which creates nutrient-rich soil, year-round sunshine, and plenty of water. Now that we have the location picked, you are going to want some key technologies under your belt. First, we need some language and writing. It's likely your group of humans may already have a method for communication, but I personally recommend, at the very least, a counting system, a way to name different members, and words for concepts like love, family, and not stabbing someone over food, which we now call table manners. Not only will a common language help effective communication between the members of your civilization, but it's also crucial if you want anything to get done. It'll also be the starting point for culture. Culture is something that is usually very reliant on your environment, but can be influenced by art, religion, politics, war, and anything that conditions your people over time. By messing with the settings of your civilization's culture, you can boost population growth, increase worker productivity, or even create a new pop sensation. Culture is something that is hard to mess with, but this early in our progress, the easiest way to do this is by starting a religion. I recommend starting with a polytheistic religion, a religion with many gods, since it is quite effective at adding or subtracting certain beliefs into it. This will help with marketing your new civilization, since you can fit just about anybody and their beliefs somewhere in the pantheon of all your other deities. However, as your civilization grows, I recommend centralizing into a monotheist religion to better hold power. Anyway, now that we have the social technologies out of the way, let's focus on the physical ones. The geographic location you choose will have a major impact on what physical technologies you will be able to use. Different types of animals, natural resources, and landscapes all come with their own tech trees. Since this tech is so dependent on your location, I'll start off with the most basic and universal ones. The first, agriculture. Obviously, you are going to need to feed your civilization, but that's a harder job than it seems. You need to start by first domesticating some plants and animals. This allows you to start farms, which can produce more calories per person than any hunter-gatherer over long enough. A grain-type plant is optimal because it provides lots of carbs, which will keep your humans energized. It also has a relatively shorter growth cycle than a lot of other plants. Grains are also effective as animal feed, so having a staple grain to grow is essential, both for feeding your people and animals. If you lack proper farmland and animals, you can turn to the ocean for your food needs. Fishing has kept people fed for millions of years, and if you can invent some string, a hook, and a net, you are good to go. If you really want to step your fishing game up, naturally some boats are going to need to be built. But let's not get ahead of ourselves here. Our civilization may have some plants and fish, but that puts them no better than most animals. They need buildings, they need infrastructure, they need security, at the very least, a safe place to reproduce and sleep. Early civilizations just stayed in simple, often natural structures, but as you settle down and end the nomadic lifestyle, you'll notice that caves don't do particularly well against invaders. And yes, you will have invaders. Once there is wealth accumulated anywhere, people will try to take it, and especially those who are uncivilized, to put it bluntly. Some of the first structures made by humans were simple shelters and rudimentary buildings. These early structures were built using natural materials available in the environment, such as wood, animal hides, stone, and mud. Here are some examples of those early structures. Huts, tents, or pit dwellings made from branches, leaves, animal hides, and other natural materials. These structures provided protection from the elements and predators, but to a limited degree. They are better than natural structures like caves, since you can build them wherever. But without advanced tools and materials, they are still prone to break pretty quickly. Then, there are bridges, roads, canals, and dams, and those can also be made to support your civilization. All of these can be made with surface-level materials, most of them just by moving dirt around, but once again, more advanced tools will be needed to take them to the next level. Naturally, early civilizations started with simple stone tools, which basically anybody can make. Just find a slightly denser rock to chop another rock with, and you can start to sculpt whatever tool you might need. A hammer, an axe, maybe even some uncomfortable sandals. However, if you want to progress, you will need to find stronger materials. Like in Minecraft, you can progress to copper than iron, but it's easier said than done. You need to first find deposits for these metals and then smelt them. Iron is the most useful for this, and it is the most abundant metal on our planet. Early societies simply forged their metals over fire without understanding the basic chemistry that goes along with it. As the fire heats up the metal, it removes the oxygen molecules from it, which make it more pure and easier to work with. Unfortunately, campfires can only get the temperature so high, and a high temperature will be needed for higher purities. Using harder stone and clay, you can build a proper furnace to heat your metals. Now we have figured out what tools are necessary for growth, and what structures need to be built. But a system is needed that'll actually make all this go into play. You are going to need an economy. It's no secret that early civilizations used quite a lot of slavery. In fear of being demonetized though, I will be approaching civilization in a more civil method. In order to get your citizens to actually work for you, what better method is there than the threat of internal damnation? Yes, you heard me. Weaponize the religion you created. Align the incentives of your religion with the goals of your civilization. Here's an example. The Aztecs existed in a very competitive geography, with many other tribes settling there and warfare being their constant reality. What better way to create a fierce warrior culture than by having the dead bodies of your enemy be the key to religious approval? By preaching the voice of God, whether you hear him or not, you can easily incentivize the followers of that same God. Another classic way to keep control over your civilization is feudalism. Your peasants will work your fields and build your castles, but in exchange, all you need to do is keep away the threats, provide protection in exchange for their labor. But that begs the question, how can you protect them? We are going to need a lot more technology to do that. The word protection gives the wrong assumption though, that the only threats are other people, when in reality, threats can exist in a lot of places. The word security fits better. A civilization needs security for their borders from other civilizations. However, they also need food security, water security, overall well-being of health, maybe even culture security, among many others. These are easier said than done, and each civilization will need its own approach for these different things. Let's go back to the example of Java in order to visualize how all these important steps will happen. Let's say you start with a small tribe of 500 to 1,000 people. First, you need to find a geography suitable, and modern-day Jakarta is prime. Very volcanic-rich soil, easy access to rivers and lakes, with the ocean nearby as well. The area is rich in bamboo, and using that and clay-rich soils, simple thatched huts can be made. Some rice fields will need to be set up near bodies of water, specifically rivers or streams that you can use to flood the fields, and then seal back up to drain the fields for harvest. Until your first harvest, fishing could easily subsidize your calorie demands. The area is rich in bronze, which would be easier to start with than iron, and has similar smelting requirements. These metals can then be hammered into tools which will improve fishing yields by hooks, hunting yields with spears and arrows, and crop yields with scythes for harvesting. To create the tools, furnaces will need to be built out of clay and stone. These tools allow one person to do more with less effort, which means more people can be freed up for other tasks. Now that we have more advanced tools, simple walls must be made out of wood to protect our huts, wells must be dug within the community for easier access to water, and basic necessities for city life must be established. With the efficiency of tools, workers can be freed up from agriculture and put into positions critical for future growth, like doctors, toolmakers, explorers, government officials, and engineers. It is also important for our culture to receive immigrants. 1,000 people isn't too many, and immigrants are important because they prevent inbreeding and keep the genetics diverse, which will build stronger immune systems and reproduction more competitive. All of this can be orchestrated by some sort of economy, like I said earlier, either by religion, a form of feudalism, or a combination of both. You will need to ensure your leaders are powerful and honest though, as to prevent revolts and mismanagement of resources. An Athenian style of democracy would be pretty effective at this small of a scale, but if you like making things interesting, I suppose a Hunger Games competition for leadership would be pretty cool. It is also important to establish a system for trade. You're gonna need money. This will vary based on what is readily available, but silver or gold is a good starting point because it is easy to centralize production, it's durable, and other civilizations would be more willing to trade for it since it's shiny. Now that we have put things into motion, as bystanders for this civilization, our only job really is to keep things in motion. Fuel the fire, so to speak. And what better way to fuel the fire than coal? That's right, we are jumping straight from the Bronze Age into the Industrial Revolution. Everything in between can be figured out by the individuals within the civilization. One person can't be in charge of every rice crop planted and house built. Coal is an undeniable next step though. Coal furnaces can reach higher temperatures using less fuels, and can also boil water more efficiently, which is rather important for the steam engine. And yeah, to further advance, you will need to create engines. Human labor can only create so much output. By harnessing energy created from engines, you can start to create more stuff for cheaper, more textiles for clothes, more food for animals and people, bigger and more durable buildings and infrastructure projects. Once you get this far with civilization and you're trying to support this many people, things will need to be done on a much larger scale. Inventions like concrete and oil refinement will make that job much easier. To make textiles, people used to have to harvest cotton or shear sheep, and output was severely limited by these factors. With oil, you can just refine it a certain way to create polyester, and oil is much easier to get on scale than wool and cotton. The same logic applies to buildings. You can only harvest so much rock out of a quarry and chop down so many trees for your buildings. If you want to build bigger and stronger, concrete is easily scalable because all you need is cement, air, water, sand, and gravel, which are all pretty easy to harvest in bulk. Let's go back to our example on Java. At this point, the civilization has around 50 to 100,000 people, based on what ancient cities' populations were. Using the key technologies, we can get that much higher. East Asia is a bit notorious for having to import coal and oil, and extraction of these resources is very costly to set up, often hard to find as well. Luckily, there are some small deposits of oil and natural gas near Jakarta, and some small coal deposits as well. While the area is lacking in iron ore, iron sand can be found real close to our civilization, which can be smelted into iron with only slightly higher difficulty by using magnetic separation. The necessities for concrete are also abundant in the area. Now that the ingredients are located, let's start our industrial revolution. First, you send out teams to collect these deposits, either state-run or private companies looking for profit. At first, this labor might have to be done manually, but once some coal is acquired, you can start to produce quality iron, which allows you to build all sorts of equipment. Using this more pure iron, you can build blast furnaces, which lead to even better iron, also called steel. Using steel, our possibilities are nearly endless. The stuff is very hard and very pure, which makes it durable and easy to work with. We can start building engines with steel, which can help automate our resource extraction in all sectors, and also help with good production in factories. It can also be used to make trains and tracks, which will allow our civilization to further expand its reach and also more efficiently transport resources. We will need fuel for these engines, and coal may be good for steam engines, but not so much for more power. If you want things like cars, tractors, and cargo ships, you're gonna need to refine some oil. By refining oil, you can get gasoline, diesel, and all sorts of fuels. Not only that, but you can make a whole host of things by turning it into plastics, make agriculture more effective by using it for fertilizer, or even things as simple as soap. Oil is refined by boiling it in a distillation unit. Different temperatures will create different outputs. Diesel is refined at 450 to 650 Fahrenheit, while ingredients for plastics require a temperature of around 1,300 Fahrenheit or more. Not all oil is the same though, and based on its purity, it will need to be cleaned up first before these steps. With these technologies, we can start to really boom our population. Fertilizers will massively increase food output, and concrete and steel buildings will be much bigger and built more densely. At this point, a bronze currency is a bit redundant, and something like our modern paper money would work just fine. People will accept its validity because there is a whole economy to back it. With paper money, it's easier to have near endless supply, and while in the ancient world many projects lacked proper funding, the opposite can take place, and especially with the leverage banks may offer, more projects can take place, and unprofitable projects' losses can be made up for with profitable ones. Risk-taking is essential for innovation, and by having enough money, more individuals would be willing to take risks. More money also means more jobs, and if people can then spend that money to improve their lives, more often than not, people will spend it on things like houses and food, which leads to further population and economic growth. All these people will be willing to spend their money on things that make their lives more comfortable, food, nice temperatures, or ease of transport, and many of these goals will be helped out by widespread access to electricity, another undeniable technology, and one that truly electrifies everything it touches. Widespread access to electricity will only further grow the population and give rise to other key technologies. Refrigerators for food longevity, energy to power subways and other transit networks, and even further down the road, computers and the internet. At this point, stuff is starting to get really complicated, and one person can only specialize in so much. I'm sorry to say it, but I think our civilization is out of our hands now. It went from a small group of 1,000, simply living off the environment, to an industrialist civilization of millions. The technologies required for growth end up giving rise to newer and better technologies, which ultimately help bend the environment to the civilization's will. Human progress throughout history has been defined by our ability to further and further manipulate the environment to our benefit. And I can't even imagine how far we are going to push that with AI and other technologies. It is important to remember, though, that just because our civilization is more advanced in forms of tech and environmental manipulation, that doesn't necessarily mean it's living any better than another one living more primitively. Most people in America would never give up their comfy lifestyles filled with cars and big houses. But on the other side of that argument, there are tribes in the Congo who are shocked that people throw themselves off skyscrapers and work in cubicles all day. Much like civilization, individuals too often measure their progress by how many things they have and what the latest technology they use is. It is important to take a step back though sometimes and say, hey, where I am right now is perfect. You are human, and it's fine to have big goals, but progress is not only made by more money and more things. It can also be made within yourself, by loving exactly where you are right now. Thanks for making it to the end of the video. But before you go, I just wanted to take a second to say this is my first video, and I would really appreciate a like and subscribe. If I could reach just 100 likes, that would mean the world to me. If not, I hope you at least learned something. Thanks for watching. Peace out, everybody.